Are you an established small business owner or aspiring entrepreneur? Would you like professional advice to help your business grow and succeed? Well, look no further. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is the territory's #1 resource to move your business forward. Enjoy no-cost advising, low-cost training, and technical assistance from experts in both the public and private sectors. The VISBDC is nationally accredited and sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration. Visit us at our locations on St. Thomas, St. John, or St. Croix, and follow us on social media at VISBDC. For easy access to all our training and networking events, be sure to join our newsletter and download the VISBDC app. The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center, here to help your business start, grow, and succeed.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the VISBDC Cybersecurity Awareness Series. Today's session is entitled Ransomware and Cyber Threats. Today, UVI Information Services and Institutional Assessment staff, Eric Patterson, will prepare USVI small businesses with the tools necessary to secure their data and electronic information. Eric will focus on common fallacies for small businesses regarding cybersecurity, the types of threats encountered, strategies for combating the threats, and how to get started. This session will cover what is ransomware and how it works, ransomware prevention, and how to understand cyber threats and what to do about them. Eric Patterson is the Director of Network Operations at the University of the Virgin Islands. For 36 years, he has been working with computers of all kinds, wired and wireless networks, cloud systems, and audio-visual systems integration. Just a friendly reminder to put your questions in the chat, and they will be addressed by the presenting team, either directly in the chat or later during the question and answer segment. A copy of the presentation is available upon email request to training@visbdc.org. And we encourage you to take a few minutes after this training and fill out the survey so we can know how we are doing. Eric, without further ado, the floor is yours.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Sarika. Well, good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here today with you. And this is the second class in this series that we are presenting. And we will soon be having another class that I see Robert Leware has joined us also this morning. He will be presenting on phishing emails as well. So I hope you'll join us for that one. Clearly, the cybersecurity needs are very important for small businesses, as well as for institutions like the University of the Virgin Islands. It's something that is always on our minds, and it can often be very mysterious and difficult to get a handle on. So, having a good starting place and having some good key concepts in mind and working on developing plans is very important for addressing cybersecurity across the board. So without further ado, we're going to get right into it. And we're going to talk today about ransomware and other cybersecurity threats, some of the most common things that we see that people do get hit with on a regular basis worldwide. So ransomware in particular started in Russia roughly 2005. And it started with a Trojan malware, which was essentially used to infect people's computers and encrypt their files. And then, of course, hold your business ransom in order for them to get some money in exchange for releasing your important files. So at UVI, we've really only had 2 cases of ransomware that we've identified. So it is not extremely common, but it is the kind of thing that you want to be prepared for, and knowing how that happens and what to do about it is going to keep you safe. So a couple of the things that we found, of course, is that the ransomware can take many forms. And a lot of times people will hear about all of these in the news. You'll hear about different threats. Maybe it's a healthcare organization, maybe it's federal government, maybe higher ed institutions, and it's mostly oriented around businesses and organizations and institutions that are higher profile. But that does not mean that smaller businesses will not find themselves a potential victim of this. So it is far better that you educate yourself about what to do and how this takes place so that you can do something about it if that time comes. At UVI, we do adhere to several very important cybersecurity standards like NIST, PCI, and GOBA and other data protection standards. All of these things are out there and available for you to look at. All you have to do is do a search for cybersecurity standards, and you can review some of the things that you do yourself in comparison to some of those requirements. They are quite extensive. Some people will never be able to accomplish them, nor would you need to, but you can at least aim to accomplish as much of it as you can to prepare yourself. So a ransomware is typically a type of malware that prevents or limits access to your systems or your files. And it's either by locking the system up and encrypting the files, or locking up, the system that protects it, that is hosted. Many of us use cloud-based systems now for our. Oh yeah, sure. Mary Jo has a comment there. I'll get to that in a second. So many of our systems are now hosted in the cloud or in other locations, and so that in itself provides some degree of safety, but it is not the end-all be-all solution. I'll get into that in a little bit. So a lot of the ransomware that we see currently is called crypto ransomware. And what you may have heard about in the news is that these malicious actors, criminals, will actually use software to encrypt your files. That means one day you just come into the office and you find that you don't have access to your data anymore. Maybe you're getting some sort of a crash, or maybe you just don't see the files. Those files will be locked up and encrypted so that nobody's going to access them without the right key or password. And that is usually at the point in which you'll have some sort of communication from whomever has done that to pay a ransom of some form and release that. Typically, what you'll see is that when they ask for money, they will ask for money in the form of Bitcoin, which can be made to be anonymous. And that's how that happens, that you will have a Bitcoin account that you can deposit the money into. And so the criminals can hide behind that, unfortunately. And that is typically what we've seen in the recent past. The pricing that they demand for these things can vary. It's usually based on the size of the organization and what they think that you can afford. There have been cases where people ask for millions of dollars in the case of some of the situations that we've seen, let's say with healthcare providers, big hospitals, and things like that, or even banks. They know that they can afford millions of dollars, and so they will ask for it. Sometimes these people will settle for less, but again, this is this kind of situation where if this data is that important to you, they will demand as much as they can. There are cases where they actually do not demand any money, but they're just doing this to be difficult or to cause problems. And that is fairly common. I mean, some of this is where you have people who are practicing hacking or practicing these skills, and they just want to figure out a way to make this stuff happen to the most likely victims. And it's unfortunate, but it's just something that we have to deal with these days. And that is fairly common as well. So one of the other things that you may see is that if people do ask for money for ransomwares, they will ask for gift cards or bank cards or something like that. And that can be kept anonymous as well. So they try to think of these ways to protect themselves and protect their identity so that you can't figure out, and law enforcement can't figure out who they really are. We'll get to some of the ways that you will be able to combat this a little bit later. So ransomware prevention. I'll go through a list of things that at UVI that we regularly do. Well, let's actually, in the chat, Mary Jo had asked to explain NIST PCI. Okay, so what this is NIST and PCI are standards. In other words, it's a document that is written by these organizations which define a essentially a list of things that you will want to do in your organization. And I'll provide a link to those a little bit later. But if you have this list of things that you need to accomplish, things like multi-factor authentication, and regular backups and disaster recovery, and people who are responsible for the protection of your environment, then you can achieve these standards, basically put it on your resume, if you will, for your organization and say we are NIST compliant or PCI compliant. NIST compliance is mostly an institutional sort of cybersecurity standard. PCI compliance is something that is oriented more towards payment systems. So if you accept credit cards or something like that directly at your business and on your business network, then the PCI compliance is something that you will want to take a look at. So we'll take a look at those a little later as we look through some of the sites for some of the organizations we want to study. Okay, so at UVI, some of the things that we are doing to protect ourselves against cyber threats and ransomware are we block some of the common forms of entry and create a plan for patching vulnerabilities in the systems. Okay, everything is done on the internet these days. All of our business, whether it's e-commerce or just user accounts, maybe logins, or even as simple as a website, it's all internet facing. So when you look at the systems that you're providing that are internet facing and basically provided to the entire world to use, you need to protect them properly. So by looking at those systems carefully and actually doing things like pen testing, okay, or vulnerability scanning, you can determine if there's something wrong with your system or if you haven't patched something or done something in order to make it more secure. You absolutely want to be able to do that and have that visibility and have that knowledge, because if you don't know, then you really will have no defense. So we scan our things regularly and look for those vulnerabilities on those systems that are internet facing. We're making sure that they're patched, they're updated, software is updated, they have the right SSL certificates to protect those internet facing sites and things like that, so that we are not as vulnerable as if you did not take those actions. We do use a system that will scan all of those systems for us in an automated way. Some people choose to pay organizations to do pen testing and vulnerability assessment, and that can be quite expensive and to the tune of tens of thousands of dollars. But you can also find good tools online that provide the service for you. And you can have a subscription to something like that, and then define the systems that you want to have scanned, and they will determine if your systems are secure or if there is a problem. One of the systems that we do use is called Pen Test Tools, and it's available for everyone. And that is a good location to go to maybe subscribe and do that vulnerability assessment for your systems. The other thing we do is detect intrusions using firewalls and security monitoring. Okay. And by the way, I am going through this list realizing that many people are not going to be able to afford to do many of these things. But as I go through it, you may get some ideas, and maybe there are some things that you do work with that you can implement, or you can find these solutions on a much smaller level or smaller scale. So we're detecting intrusions, and we use our firewalls to monitor for certain patterns that will follow the cyber attackers or ransomware, things that are maybe are coming from places where we would not expect traffic to come from. We'll get into things like distributed denial of service attacks a little later. But many of these things are just automated computer systems that are going to regularly scan and look for vulnerabilities on your systems or your network. So we're looking for those detections. And pretty much any good firewall system is going to give you a log of this kind of traffic that you will see coming in. If you see traffic that is persistent and you get this like throughout the day, all day, almost every day, it's probably not somebody who is a customer who's just going to visit every once in a while, or somebody who's just a casual viewer or user of your systems, but maybe something that's looking for something deeper. So you look for these patterns that may be somewhat suspicious using your firewall or your security systems that are on the edge of your network or on your computer systems. And you can even get this with something as simple as the Windows firewall built into Windows Server or in Linux. And looking at those logs and studying them is one way that we detect those intrusions. Another thing that you want to be able to do is use antivirus software and malware prevention software to make sure that files and your actual systems are not encrypted or not locked up. Much of the time, they'll use some sort of file insertion, which means that from the internet, they can upload a file. It could be something as simple as an email attachment or simply a web page that has active pages on it. And it can run a script and install a file on your systems that will encrypt the files. So if you have good antivirus software or malware prevention software on your systems, that can help greatly to prevent that encryption from happening, where people are going to lock your systems up and demand some sort of a ransom for that. So it's very, very important you use good antivirus software. And by the way, a lot of people do ask questions about antivirus software because there's a lot of antivirus software out there where you pay for this and you're really not getting your money's worth. And it's funny to see that actually the Microsoft Windows Defender antivirus software that comes with most Windows systems is actually one of the highest rated antivirus softwares, and it's built into Windows and Windows Server. So you might pay for, let's say, McAfee or Norton or something like that, and actually those are some of the worst rated antivirus softwares out there. But you can look at things like Malwarebytes or AVG or Avast, which are now the same company, and you pay for and subscribe for those antivirus softwares, and those will be most helpful to you. Another thing that we do is we create offsite and offline backups. So that means that our mission critical systems are backed up in a way where those files are at another location. Maybe that's in the cloud, maybe that's in another data center someplace else. And those files are kept safely at another site and backed up regularly, because the backing up of your files and keeping them safe is probably the number one thing that most people can do to prevent ransomware attacks. If your files are safe and hackers cannot get to them, then if you're a victim of ransomware, you can simply say, that's okay, because our files are good. We have them over here, and they're not locked up. We can restore everything. And that's what a lot of big organizations do now, is they keep everything backed up regularly, maybe on a daily basis, at least once a week, so that that data can be recovered fairly quickly and restored to another system if need be. All right. So, you can basically just ignore the demands for some sort of a ransom and say, that's okay. Keep that. And we're going to restore our systems anyway. But of course, there are things that you have to consider, such as, do you have sensitive user data that you do not want to be released? This is what happens a lot when some of these organizations will get hacked. There's a lot of user data that is in those files. And essentially, it's not that they're denying access to these files to the company, but the fact that this company does not want to have this data released to the rest of the world, because that will create any number of problems. Maybe it's usernames and passwords. And then that company's reputation is just going to, become really bad, that they were a victim to this and all this user information was released. The worst thing that can happen is things like bank account records or financial data, or things that can be used for identity theft. That can be a serious risk for a company if that data gets released to the public, or even provided on the dark web for hackers and other criminal types to use to their own benefit. So that is something that you want to be super careful of. So backing up the files might be able to bring you back into operation, but it doesn't ensure that a ransomware or hacker or criminal of that type would not release that data to people you don't want it to be released to. So that means you have to keep yourself protected on the front line to prevent any attack at all. And of course, you don't want to be attacked twice. So you want to learn from the things that you've seen. If there is maybe some sort of a threat that you've experienced, maybe a denial of service attack, or maybe something suspicious that you've seen, immediately take that into account and do something so that that is not a threat any longer. So if we see maybe IP addresses that are regularly hitting our systems, we're going to investigate. We're going to go find out where that is and who's doing that. And we're going to add maybe some policies to our firewalls. We're going to increase that security to prevent those things from happening if they are things that we do not want to have happen. So you have to learn from the things that you find and study that fairly carefully. Now, most people are going to have, much smaller systems than we have, but that does not mean that you should not be doing exactly the same thing. You want to be looking at your edge security. You want to be looking at those things that are happening to your systems. And if you maybe subscribe to some sort of hosted service or something, make sure that they can provide that information to you. Who's visiting that system? Who's looking at that site on a regular basis? Is there a list of IPs, internet protocol addresses that people are hitting your systems from all over the world? How often are these people looking at your site or accessing your system? And you want to do as much as you can to kind of take a look at that on a regular basis and see if you find any patterns that might be suspicious. All right. So what can you do right away to start preventing some of these ransomware threats and other cyber threats? Is the first and most important thing is to develop a plan, okay, and to follow it. With the standards that I mentioned earlier, like NIST and PCI and GLBA, they do require that you have a plan. And that not only that you have the plan, but you identify the person who's responsible for the plan. Okay. So those two things sort of identify that, you have considered these things, that you have something in place, and that, that person is responsible for following that plan. The plans can vary based on how extensive, you want to be, or the type of cybersecurity standard you want to follow. And some of them can be pages and pages long. Some of them can simply be a single page and, just define some of the most basic things. But have a plan and make sure that the people that are responsible for these things, cybersecurity and protecting your assets, protecting your systems, know how to follow the plan and actually practice it. Okay. Let's say you include things like a backup policy where you're going to back up your files to a safe location every day or every week on a regular basis, and that you know how that takes place and that you can document that it takes place. Your staff will practice it, be experts. If you're ever IT audited or something, you can provide proof of it. Not only that, but you can restore those files. So you want to practice restoring the files from your backups so that you can put everything back the way it's supposed to be if you do have some sort of an issue. A lot of times we'll call that disaster recovery. And we want to do that in such a way that we can recover everything and put it back the way it's supposed to be as quickly as we can to get back in operation. So with that plan, you're going to have it documented. You're going to follow the plan, make sure that people know the plan, and practice it. As I was saying, you want to be able to look in your first line defenses and your firewall and things like that, and look for any intrusions. Okay. It's good to sort of learn something about what attacks do look like. Most of the time, you're just looking for repetitions. Okay. You're looking for things that are happening so regularly that that's just not a normal way to access your system. Let's say you have an e-commerce system and you're selling products on a website or something like that, or you have visitors to your website. You're going to see those people once in a while. Maybe you see them, once a day, once every couple of days or something. And you're looking at IPs that are accessing your system. But if you start to see that where that IP is hitting your system every couple of minutes, it's probably not good for a period of days or weeks, because that could be something where they're probing your systems to see if there are any vulnerabilities, things like that, that you can do fairly easily. But you need to be able to access your firewall logs and your security logs for your systems. Of course, create the backups, as I was saying. One of the very easy ways that you can do that without a lot of expense and without a lot of specialized hardware and software is to use something like Microsoft 365 with OneDrive and or SharePoint. I do recommend that because they have very good security on those systems, and they actually provide things like versioning. That means that if the current existing version of a set of files is compromised or damaged, you can go back to an earlier version of those files and recover those that have not been damaged. There are also ways where if files are deleted, you can go back into a recycle bin or something like that, similar, and you can recover those files that have been deleted and undelete those files. So they provide those things to protect you from threats like this specifically. So that is, Microsoft 365 with OneDrive and SharePoint. And yes, you can set up automated ways to back your files up to both of those systems. And that will keep much of your data safe using that. And all you would need is a subscription to that system. You can do similar things with, say, Dropbox or Google Drive, although they don't provide the same level of security as Microsoft does. Another way that you can back up your files that I think is really useful is to use some sort of an offline storage system. Maybe it's a flash drive, maybe it's an external hard disk drive, and all you have to do is plug that into your system and use some synchronization software. And I'll give you a link to something that I use pretty regularly to back up my files. Let's see here. And I will share this on my screen in 1 second. All right. Here we go. Okay. This is a link here that I will post in the chat to the Microsoft description of how they use SharePoint and OneDrive for Business to protect against ransomware. You can take a look at that. Okay, I think sharing that right there for you. In the chat, I will put that URL. You can read that. Okay, excellent. All right. Next, I'm going to give you a link to a piece of software there that I use regularly. And that is called SyncToy. And what that will do is you can set up a synchronization between your computer systems and a flash drive or a external hard disk drive or something like that. And you can synchronize those files just by pressing a button. Okay. And it's sort of quick and easy and cheap. You don't have to go to a whole lot of trouble to do it. And then when you're done, you unplug that thing and it's going to be safe from any kind of online hackers. So that's one very good way, very simple way to keep your files safe. If you don't use the OneDrive SharePoint solution, you could use something like that. So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't have to be really complicated, but you're backing up your files and you're keeping them away from any of these threats. Okay. Are there any questions so far? I've been talking a lot, and see if we've got any questions or concerns I can address in the meantime. All right, thank you. All right, so moving on. So understanding the threats and what you can do about them, because there are all different things that people get hit with these days. Some of them are real and some of them are fake, and you want to be able to identify some of these things pretty quick so that you can do something about it. So some of the high priority threats, of course, are the real ransomware, where your files have been stolen or locked up and you get some sort of threatening email to pay the ransom. There are cyber attacks where your systems are being actively attacked, or maybe a denial of service attack. A denial of service attack, not everybody really understands when they are being made the victim of a denial of service attack. And what that is an automated system most times that hammer your systems with so much data, so much internet traffic, that suddenly you find your system is just about inaccessible. And that's their goal. They want to deny the service that you're providing to everyone else. And all they have to do is just throw a whole lot of junk data towards your systems over the internet. And then people can't get to your systems. People can't get to your sites. And even on regular commodity internet or small business internet, you will see this happen sometimes. Usually this happens if people attract some attention to their site, And you will find that there's automated bots, okay, which is just pieces of software that detect high-profile sites on the internet. They look for the vulnerabilities, and they're just trying to do whatever they can to create problems on these sites. With a denial of service attack, it is the kind of thing you only have two choices that you can resolve this. Either you're going to wait it out, okay, it could be a couple of hours, and generally they will tire of it and move on, okay. If that's not acceptable, then you will have to use some other kind of service where you can reroute traffic to your systems. Generally, those services are not very cheap. You can pay for them. They usually involve DNS or domain name service redirections. A good system that does that is Cisco Umbrella, but that is very expensive. And so redirecting the traffic to your sites for that purpose is somewhat difficult. And that is why the services tend to be expensive. Not a lot of people do that. So if you wait it out, generally things will come back to normal. If they felt that it was successful, they may try again sometime. If it persists, well, then we're going to get into what you do next. But that's just one of the things that we have to put up with doing business on the internet these days. And we've been the victim of that maybe 2 or 3 times at UVI in the past. And it's lasted sometimes 2 to 3 hours, where it's very difficult to get to anything on the internet. Cyber attacks are actually active attacks. Unfortunately, it means that you've gotten some sort of attention of some hackers, and they are actively trying to hack into your systems. You might not always be aware that this is happening. Usually the first sign is when you find that something has changed on your system. They want to be as invisible as they can. Something that you can do about this is to make sure that you have your antivirus software and your firewalls all working properly. And one of the techniques that they use is they will hack into your system and deposit some files on your system that will then later on get the information they're looking for. Maybe it's financial information, maybe it's personal information, or something that could be used for identity theft. And those files can automatically send that data back to the cyber attacker. How do you find that? Using good antivirus software. And how do you stop it? By using good firewall software. All right. And then the real ransomware can be a very serious problem. So with all of these, what you want to be aware of is that I am going to put another link here and put that up there for you. Put that in the chat. Is where do you go to get help? Because some of these things may be beyond people. So this is probably the first place to go. And share this. And that is the federal government's CISA or CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. They have been becoming more and more involved in sort of day-to-day operations for many businesses and institutions, because they have been developing, of course, a federal program to prevent cybercrime. This site here and the URL I gave you is where you want to go to read about how you can report any kind of cybercrime. All right. So it's important to keep this URL, keep this link. If you ever need it, it's there. The good thing about CISA is that they will also provide help for you. Okay. Not just at the time when you were attacked or vulnerable, but in advance. So they do provide some services where you can speak with them and even have somebody do a scan of your environment and give you some good advice about what you should do to better secure your systems. So this it's good to have them, in your list of contacts and maybe read a little bit more about what they offer. I have communicated with them a few times, and I do use their reporting system, okay, to report any kind of cyber attacks, denial of service, or any situations that we have. Okay, so it is very important that you take a look through this. And by the way, you notice that it does refer to reporting incidents as for the NIST publication. So this is part of that NIST standard I referred to earlier. Okay, and you can click on this to read even more about that NIST standard. Okay, what we call NIST 800. All right. And that's a very complete cybersecurity standard, maybe something not everybody will want to do, but at least you can take a look through and see if there are things that you can do to improve things. And then, of course, here you can simply click to report an incident. Okay. There's plenty of good information on this site about cybersecurity, and you definitely want to report things when you find them to them here. Okay, so here's another site coming up. All right, and let's get that URL in the chat for you. All right. And that's the FBI's link to their cybercrime center. Just like CISA, this is very important for you to keep. And I will tell you that we have been in conversation with the local FBI office, and we are hoping to actually do some presentations with them on cybersecurity. We're trying to set that up. I'm sure that will be very interesting. But this is another good site to read through. And also you will find here that they will have a reporting section where you can report these things to them as well. Especially as a small business, any kind of business, you want to report that immediately to somebody who's going to do something about it. You know that we have a local FBI office. So if there's something that you are doing and you need help with, you can also try to communicate with them. But they have plenty of good information about cybersecurity education and things that you can do. As you can see here, common crimes and risks online. So they have plenty for you to look at here. So that is something that you'll want to keep on hand. Okay, so next thing we're going to get into, let me share my screen for this next image here, because we're going to take a look at fake ransomware. All right, which one is it? Here we go. All right. Can everybody see that? Okay, this is fake ransomware email. Okay, this is not real. So this is a threat, and what they're doing is they are hoping that you will believe their lies. Okay, it's an email that you might get, and you can take a look through that, see how that's formatted. It's very common. A lot of times they will just copy and paste the same things and send it to 1,000 different people. What they're hoping is that you read that and get scared and pay them some money. Okay. The thing with this one in particular is that the people who actually sent this didn't really have anything to hold on this company anyway. They didn't have any encrypted files. They didn't steal anything. Basically, they weren't holding anything ransom. But they were hoping that if the person read this, okay, that what would happen is they would say, "Oh, we can't take any chances. Okay, we're just gonna, pay them and make it go away." But there was no reason for them to do so because their systems were not at risk. Okay, and this can be difficult because you might say, "Well, how do we know?" Okay, um, you want to minimize the kind of communication you have in a case like this. You don't want to go back and start a conversation with somebody like this and say, "Oh, yeah, prove what it is that you've got and prove all of this," because of course, you're just dealing with people who aren't going to really cooperate with you. Um, sometimes people have found that if they write these people back, that they don't get any reply, and then it just goes nowhere. But if you do get this, maybe you just do want to report it to CISA or FBI just to be safe, and have them help you to check it out. Have them ask a few questions, because the other thing is that with this email, you actually have a little bit of evidence, because you might be able to find out who sent this email, okay, and track that down, and they can help you to track that down. They're very good at tracking down emails. You can find who made this threat, even if the threat isn't real. And that could be very important to stop even these threats emails, because that's, a kind of fraud. So be aware that there are some fakes out there. You don't want to take too many chances. First thing to happen would be that you want to go and check your systems out, see if everything is operating normally, see if you've lost access to anything, or if anything is different at all in your systems. If it is, then you probably take it pretty seriously. But I definitely recommend that you contact CISA or contact the FBI through those links that I provided. Okay. All right. So next one. Let's see here. And I will give you a quick warning. I will not leave this up for very long. The content is somewhat rude, and I apologize, but this is real. This is a real thing. And this is extremely common. Okay. This is, again, some sort of fake ransomware. Okay. Where they're basically telling you, "Hey, we've got you compromised and you're going to pay us." Okay. But for the most part, this is not real. They don't have anything like this. I'm sure most of you would realize that pretty quickly, that this is a fake. Okay. But this is, a lot of people do fall for these things because they don't want to take any chances. So that is very important to keep in mind, that there are plenty of fakes out there as well. And you want to be very mindful of that. Okay. Um, phone calls. Many of you are probably aware that we get phone calls occasionally from people who are maybe organizations or businesses that we trust. Maybe it's your bank, maybe it's Amazon, maybe it's Microsoft. Many of those things are going to be fake. They're not real. Okay, they will try to scam people and have you believe that they are calling you for some legitimate business, when that is absolutely not true. Okay, they will tell you that your account's been compromised and they need you to log in and share your screen and do all of those things to help them to solve this very important, critical problem that you have. Most of that, probably 98% of that, is all fake and it's a scam. Usually, when you have a problem of that nature, organizations, businesses are going to send you a very official and secure looking email for you to address it and to handle it in that manner. They're not going to call you. Somebody's not going to be on the phone with you to try to walk through that and make you do something right there immediately. That would most likely be a scam. So now, in regard to the emails that you may get, those are potentially phishing emails. And Robert Laware is going to do a training class coming up soon on phishing emails and how to detect those because it is very, very common. And with a phishing email, you may get something of a similar nature where it's saying, well, your account's been compromised, or you owe X amount of money, or you have to deal with this situation now. It's very important. And please click this link to take care of this, to log in or do something else. Well, don't believe it. Okay. Don't click the links. Don't reply to the email. If you think that it might be real, the best way to handle that is to go directly to the business or the organization or the entity that is supposedly emailing you about the situation and log into their site as you would normally do. So let's say, for instance, it's your bank. Okay. So we'll say, maybe it's an email from First Bank, and they say, well, your account's been compromised. Click this link to log in, put your credentials in. But you think that that might not be true. So instead, open your web browser, don't click the link, type in the address for First Bank, and log in like you normally do. Go and check things out. Are there any notifications or messages? Is there anything there that indicates that there is a problem? If not, the email is probably fake. It's a phishing email. Okay. And if you're that concerned about it, then you can use that website and any customer service information on the website, not the original email, to contact those people and get more information. So basically, you're fact checking what that potentially phishing email is telling you. Don't believe it. Okay, emails and text messages can be spoofed. What that means is that you may get an email or a text message on your phone from what seems to be somebody that you know, and they are asking you for something strange. Maybe it's somebody that is very important. Maybe it's the president of the company, and they say, "Well, I need you to go out and buy me 3 iTunes gift cards quick, and give me the codes." And you think, "Well, that's a little strange. I've never been asked to do that before." Well, that means that that's maybe not that person. Emails and SMS, cell phone text messages can be spoofed. So be very aware that if you get some strange request or something and that doesn't seem normal for that person or agency or business, that may not be true. And you want to make sure to verify it with that person directly, not by replying to that email or not by replying to that text message, but communicate with them in the way that you would normally do, that you know how to do. Also, just browsing the internet can be very dangerous using your web browser. A lot of times things can be installed on your computer, and it's a good way to install malware and that sort of thing that can lead to ransomware, cyber attacks. So be careful about any browser extensions, software that you install in your web browser. Be careful of any strange websites that you visit, because even looking at images on a website or files on a website can install things on your computer. And that is why it is very important, as I said earlier, to have very good antivirus software on your computer to help prevent things like that. Okay, and finally, the last thing is, if you feel that you are a victim of any kind of a cyber crime like this, ransomware or cyber attacks or phishing or anything like that, don't panic. Instead, follow some of these instructions. Go through things carefully. Don't react and try to respond without thinking. Get some help if you need it. Either through CISA or the FBI, or if you work with any kind of cybersecurity expert, then do that. Don't panic. Don't reply immediately. Take the time to think about what's happening. If you have a cybersecurity plan in place, you're going to use that to take action. Okay, what do we do in these cases? Maybe we start shutting our systems down to protect them. Do things like that. So keep your head about you. Think about it carefully. What are you going to do next? And don't be pushed or pressured into responding in their time frame. Okay, that's very important. And also, these kinds of scams happen to people every day all over the world. And one of the biggest problems that that people who are trying to help with this sort of thing find is that people don't want to admit that they are a victim of these things. So, there's millions of people have experienced this. And the most important thing to do is if you are a victim in some way, then tell somebody and get help. Report it to the authorities and work on a solution. Okay. It's going to happen to everybody at some point. Okay. So you're not alone. This is very common. And unfortunately, it's a terrible issue worldwide. And there are all sorts of reasons for it. But what you want to do is, you want to make sure to involve somebody who knows better. By the way, I've noticed that I think that maybe some of these links haven't gone into the chat, so I'm going to copy them and put them back in there. Meantime, if there are any questions, please let me know. Be happy to address them with you. All right, Robert, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Hey, you got anything you want to add, man?
No, pretty much you covered a wide range. Just for those who will be able to follow up next week, Thursday, yeah, I will be doing the phishing awareness training, and that goes a little bit more in depth of how these emails will look, how they will craft these different tactics in order to entice you to do certain things. So we'll take a deep dive into that. But as far as everything else, you've covered a lot, and it's very helpful information.
Excellent, excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If there's no other questions, Sharika, back to you.
Hi, yeah, I was on standby for questions as well, so I guess you covered everything.
All right. I hope so.
If we can just get that slide back up and we can share our information for everyone to be in contact with us. So the VISBDC has so much more in store for you as VI small businesses. You can visit our website at www.visbdc.org. Download the VISBDC app on your mobile device from the appropriate app store. Like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Google Business, and you can subscribe to the VISBDC YouTube channel for new uploads of our on-demand webinars. Here's a preview of our upcoming workshops and trainings. On January 29th, we have the Lieutenant Governor's Office of Corporations and Trademarks. They're going to be presenting on registering and maintaining your business name in the USVI electronically. On February 1st, we have our IT team back with us again with our Cybersecurity Awareness Series. And Mr. Robert Lower is going to be presenting on phishing and email threat awareness. On February 2nd, we have our in-person workshop that's entitled Shopify, Building Your Website for Success. On February 6th, we have VBOC, and they're going to be presenting on understanding markets and your competitive space. And on February 9th, we have the VISBDC State Director, John Marasco, and he's going to be presenting on Manager's Guide to Restaurant Financial Reports. So for more information, you can go ahead to the VISBDC website, select training seminars, and take a look at the different events we have to come. So I don't see any questions, so I'll go ahead and successfully close out. So once again, I would like everyone to pay attention to your email. I will forward you a survey in a few minutes, and please fill it out in its entirety and let us know how we're doing. And on behalf of the entire VISBDC network, we thank you for your time and attendance. So Eric, thanks once again to you and the entire team. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful day.